What is good, everybody? Welcome to TGI Football here on the SB Nation NFL show. A reminder before we go anywhere further that our show is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. If it isn't obvious by our name, we do this show on Fridays, and we will recap Thursday Night Football. We will, of course, spin forward and preview all of the action to come in what is week 6 of the NFL. We will also have our Pick 3 segment, which is also brought to you by DraftKings. I say we. My name is RJ Ochoa. He is Stephen Serda. He is Brandon Lee Gowton. BLG, congratulations to both of our baseball teams. Moving on.
Exciting times, maybe a little bit of a World Series rematch in store. We'll see how the championship rounds go, but excited to preview the week 6 of NFL football.
Steven, what sports are currently captivating your attention that are not the NFL? Great start to the NFL show, by the way.
Nothing. I follow football. I don't.
Good answer.
I like football and I like the NBA. Those are the only things that I really follow closely. I have not watched a single Major League Baseball postseason game.
Who's your NBA team?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I don't really have a team.
Okay.
It's kind of like my NFL. Like I just like the sport and I just watch games and I bet on it. And
who are some of your favorite players then?
Yeah.
Giannis. I love Damian Lillard too, so that is going to be fun. I'm excited for that this season. I like LeBron. I'm not a LeBron hater. I don't really have an issue with him, and I love Jimmy Butler. And I wish the Heat would have done something more because I think it's better for the NBA when Jimmy Butler's on a good team. But we'll see how it goes.
Steven, you are kind of the Aldous Snow of the NFL and the NBA, where you think you're this like citizen of the world, and you have to pick an ideology, as Kristen Bell told him in that movie. Brandon once told me he's never seen Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Can you believe that?
That is kind of crazy. I've seen it a lot of times.
I don't time for movies, man. Too long.
I made that up. I didn't know. I really don't know if he's ever seen it. I made that up. So if you haven't seen it, that was a good job by me. So we are here first and foremost to recap Thursday Night Football. Steven, the NFL team who you, I guess, are contractually obligated to care the most about are the Kansas City Chiefs. They won 19-8. Improved to 15-0 against the Broncos in the Patrick Mahomes era. That is so stupid and unbelievable. Kind of like the way that Sean Payton handled the end of the first half. What were your initial and I guess after a night's worth of sleep takeaways from the game?
I think there's going to be a lot made out of the fact that the Chiefs only put up 19 points, and most people I think would be worried about that because the Chiefs offense has not been particularly special this season. Last night, they couldn't score in the red zone. They only walk away with one touchdown after, last week we missed out on Patrick Mahomes throwing for 300 yards, and he manages to throw for 300 yards last night.
We didn't miss out on that. You missed out on that.
I missed out on that. But I'm really not. If you had to pick one thing about the Chiefs that you're like, they'll figure it out eventually, it's obviously the offense, and it's obviously Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid getting things worked out. There's a lot of overhaul on that side of the ball for them this season. They got a lot of young players, and they have 2 new tackles that they're trying to figure out how all of that stuff fits together still. And through 6 weeks of the season, they're still 5-1 despite all of that. And their defense is playing like a top 5 defense in the NFL. So I'm fine with the Chiefs winning this way for now. Down the line, if they can't figure it out, I'll start to get a little bit worried, but they're 5-1. Their defense is playing lights out. I didn't take away that much from that game because I also don't think they took the Broncos seriously at all last night.
Yeah, I think this is a team that, sometimes just plays to the level of their competition. And the Chiefs game was on these TVs at this bar I was at these tables, like right next to the tables. Each little table had its own TV. And then the Phillies game were on like the overhead TV. So I was kind of like, my attention was split between those two. But every time I was looking at the Chiefs game, even though the score would be close or whatever, or a slow start, I'm like, they're going to win this game. It's not really like the game looked way closer to me than it ever truly really was. It's kind of just like the Chiefs were playing with their food because they knew they could, and they would do the Chiefs thing where they're eventually just going to win at the end. I was never thinking, I don't think anyone was ever thinking there was actually going to be a real upset in this game. So they didn't score the most style points in this one, but it just, who cares? It doesn't matter. You beat the Broncos. You're 4-1. Everything's fine.
Yeah, 5-1, Brandon. You're selling them short on a win. I agree. Like, it was a little boring, but it also felt like a larger lead than it was at any point. Like, and maybe that some of that is the Broncos and their, whatever you want to call it, inability, ineptitude, incompetence, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, like, life is good if you're a Chiefs fan, obviously, if these are your biggest problems. And now you get the mini bye to rest up for the Chargers, who will be coming off of a short week in Monday Night Football. That is so dumb, by the way, that the NFL does this to teams. Like, this should not happen, but whatever. And then the Broncos again, obviously twice in 3 weeks, which is also dumb. The NFL shouldn't do that. I guess we have to talk about the Broncos side of things. I made mention of it. Here's the thing. And this is not the week to defend Mike McCarthy, obviously. But if Mike McCarthy or Brandon Staley or Kevin O'Connell did what Sean Payton did at the end of this first half, it would not have gone as quietly into the night as it did. And so Sean Payton called a timeout and gave the Chiefs an opportunity to possess the ball at the end of the first half, which they converted into a Harrison Butker field goal. Shout out to me for starting Harrison Butker in fantasy. Pretty awesome Friday morning. The Broncos are an abject failure. They're an abject disaster. Like, what is redeeming about the Broncos right now, Steven?
Well, nothing. And it seems pretty clear to me that they're just tanking. Like, they trade away Randy Gregory. They released Frank Clark this morning. Jerry Jeudy's supposedly on the chopping block. Like, it just feels to me like Sean Payton came in, was like, all you guys suck. Nathaniel Hackett sucked. Everything about this situation sucks. And he was like, maybe we'll see how it goes week 1. And then he was like, no, this team's terrible. And now they're just selling everybody off for parts and trying to tank to get a top 5 pick and get one of these top end quarterbacks in the upcoming NFL draft class, because I don't really understand what else they could be working towards right now. Like, Marvin Mims, who has looked like a spectacular player, ran like 3 routes last night, like was not involved in the offense at all. And it seems like you would want to get that guy on the football field. Lil Jordan Humphrey ran more routes than him on Thursday night after being cut earlier in the day to make roster moves and then added back late in the evening. Like, it just doesn't seem like they've got any kind of direction. It doesn't seem like any of those players are even interested in this season at this point. Like, it just feels like a total tank job where nobody is playing that hard. Nobody is taking things seriously. And Russell Wilson just looks like one of the dumbest trades in NFL history right now. Like, he is just not very functional, and he'd actually been okay this season. Their defense had been a disaster. But last night, going against the Chiefs' top defense, you see that he's a barely functional quarterback at this point in his career.
Maybe the Jets can trade for him. If the Broncos are doing this right, they should sell off a lot of these things. But I guess my question is, like, will they do that? I know, Steven, you talked about like kind of tanking moves, but is Sean Payton really on board with that?
What are you buying though from the Broncos? Like, how many years has like Jerry Jeudy been on the trade block? I mean, fine. Like, but like my point is, like, these assets have lost a lot of luster.
Yeah, I mean,
over
you're not
the years, like throughout this little mini run.
But they don't have like a 2nd round pick in 2024 still. So like,
I mean, whose fault is that? I mean, that's the hilarity of it all, by the way.
I think they should. I mean, again, you don't see teams really tank like this, but they should be sellers and should be, selling things off. And what is left to salvage this season? Trade deadline is in 18 days as we're recording this. So I think it's kind of just about doing those moves that kind of focus on looking ahead to next year, playing young guys, selling pieces off. And that's all you can really hope for. And getting that number 1 overall pick, currently second. The Broncos would be picking second in the 2024 NFL draft, with only the Carolina Panthers, whose pick is owned by the Bears, ahead of them at 0-5.
The problem with the Broncos. Go ahead, Steven.
I was just gonna say, I also think Sean Payton just has no commitment to anybody on that roster, and I think he's making it evident. Last night, they activated second-year tight end Greg Dulcich off of IR after he had spent the first part of the season on injured reserve due to a hamstring injury. He had one practice. They activated him. He got hurt again, injured the same hamstring last night. And who knows if that's going to be a lingering thing moving forward. He might have to go back to injured reserve. Like, that's the kind of move where you're just like, yeah, I don't really care about any of the players on this roster, and I don't really care what we do this season.
So the problem with Russell Wilson right now, to kind of get back to that, because that's where this all starts and ends, right? Like, and I mean, like, the idea that Sean Payton would want to move on from this is hilarious, again, to me, given that he signed up for this job knowing the circumstances that were involved. But obviously it's not a great thing for the Broncos that like everyone in NFL media is writing about the contract situation for Russell Wilson right now. So I'm sure you both saw this. Russell Wilson has a base salary in 2025, or excuse me, he has a contract. All right, it's $37 million in 2025. And that becomes guaranteed on the 5th day of the league year in 2024. I mean, like, it's inconceivable. I mean, it's really, really low odds, I would argue, for the Broncos to move on from Russell Wilson before 2024 is over. But I mean, Brandon, like, they kind of, and Russell hasn't been like awful, but I mean, they are just in such need of a reset. I don't, but you can't keep like biting the bullet and absorbing dead money and trading away draft capital. Like, they're just sinking further and further into all of this.
He doesn't fit their timeline at this point, like good or bad, just doesn't, it's not the right fit.
Right.
So yeah, you're probably going to have to take on a big dead hit, maybe the new biggest one in NFL history, but that's fine. Like, it's not like, oh, well, we have to just, it's sunk cost fallacy. Like, at some point, you just have to bite the bullet and try to get anything you can for him and move on. And obviously, that's made easier when you can actually turn the page again to that young quarterback prospect you're hopefully getting in the draft this upcoming year. But for now, tough scene. Like you said, not much redeeming things you can say.
Steven, I have one question about Chiefs fans. Because I think about like if the Cowboys or Eagles were 15-0 against the other in recent games, and if their quarterback had never lost, whatever, like it would be it would be discussed all the time, and it would be something that like each fan base would relish in. But the Broncos have been so bad. Like, my perception is that Chiefs fans just kind of like, whatever. Like, the Chiefs have actually almost surpassed, in my mind, the Broncos in like NFL history hierarchy. Like, they're almost a more Tiffany brand franchise given the recent success in the Mahomes era than the Broncos were. And they're pushing the Broncos further and further down towards the cellar.
I think Chiefs fans really relish in this because I mean, most of them would remember the Peyton Manning era where he just dominated the Chiefs. But it's like it used to be, it was like Chiefs and Raiders was the big rivalry. And I think this generation of Chiefs fan, it's much more Chiefs and Broncos than it is Chiefs and Raiders because the Raiders have been garbage their entire lives. So
the disrespect for the Chargers is hilarious.
And nobody takes the Chargers seriously. So it's
don't have a real fan base anymore, too.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So I think Chiefs fans really, really celebrate being so dominant over the Broncos. And the Broncos fans every year are like, this is the year the Broncos are going to win the AFC West. And like, I saw a clip this morning from Rashee Rice had a drop earlier in the season. It was a bad one. He was wide open, would have been a long touchdown, dropped it. It was like, Chiefs drafted another wide receiver bust, and Rashee Rice looked like the best wide receiver on the football field last night for the Chiefs.
Who have like what Broncos fans were doing this? Like, who was the receiver the Broncos have drafted that like you would want, Brandon? Like, that's what I'm saying. There's no. Who was the last great player the Broncos drafted? Maybe Justin Simmons, but like before that, are we going all the way back? Like, they haven't been like a great drafting team. Like, the success that they had in 2015, Peyton Manning was a free agent, DeMarcus Ware, TJ Ward, Emmanuel Sanders, Aqib Talib. Like they're not known for like their scouting department prowess.
Probably Brock Osweiler.
Oh my gosh! Wow, I don't know if you're Sun Devil, great. Brock
Surtain, obviously Surtain. It'd be
sure.
Surtain. Yeah,
sure. But even his shine is like dipping in out. Man, I kind of feel for them. I didn't watch the Steve Smith video. Did you, either of you? Brandon, you said you were at a bar.
I did. I did watch that before I went out.
So I haven't seen that, but like that's it sucks to be there. Where like everyone is just lining up to dunk on you. Yeah, and that's where the Broncos are. So, Steven, we'll give you the final word on the Broncos.
They're just an absolute garbage football team. And so the Chiefs only putting up 19 points is not a concern. It's a division game. They don't take them seriously. Andy Reid was running a practice last night, basically.
Okay, well, we are going to preview all of the Week 6 games across the rest of the NFL. But before we do, we are going to get to our Pick 3, which is brought to you by our friends at DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, Brandon, last week we did the Kansas City Chiefs visiting the Minnesota Vikings. You and I, we both picked legs that were successful. We tried to reason with Stephen for picking a leg that failed us 2 weeks prior, where you and I were both successful again. He peed into the wind last week, Stephen did, Brandon. And how did it go, Brandon? I would like you to tell us the result.
It didn't work out exactly. I don't even know how much it was short. It wasn't by too much, though. It wasn't short by too much, I don't think. But it was short. I think it was about short by like 26 yards or so.
281 yards.
Yep.
Is that 300, Stephen?
Nope.
Okay. So we failed, and we still have yet to hit on the same game parlay. But this is the week. As far as our success this regular season, Brandon, you and I are both 2-3 as far as our legs. Stephen, what a surprise. You are 1-4. This week, our same game parlay is structured around the Philadelphia Eagles visiting the New York Jets. Brandon, I will remind everyone that the Jets have never defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in franchise history. You can go first, Brandon. What are you taking and why?
Yeah, it's 50 years of history there, 13 games, 13 no team in the NFL has another like undefeated streak like that. It's very unique. Anyway, I am going with Zach Wilson over on 0.5 interceptions in this game. Zach Wilson has thrown 23 interceptions in 27 games played in his career. It's 26 starts. So he has a history of turning the ball over. I know there's like this idea is playing better recently. Okay, great. I mean, he still has 5 interceptions in 5 games this season, all said. I think the Eagles' defensive line is going to be able to put pressure on Zach Wilson. Jets' offensive line was already kind of shaky, and they just lost their starting right tackle, Elijah Vera Tucker. Hassan Reddick is heating up. I wanted to do a prop on him, actually, but that was not available in the same game parlay section. If you go to just the straight bets, you could look at the over on Hassan Reddick sacks at 0.75. And I like that because he's going up against Jets backup right tackle Max Mitchell, who has not been good when he's had to play. So I think the Eagles pass rush is going to pressure Zach Wilson into at least one mistake, just one interception. That's all you need. And I think that's going to hit.
I think that's smart. Good odds, logic, reason. Well done, Brandon. You're better at this than some people in the chat. We don't need to name names, point fingers, or anything like that. I'll go next, Stephen, to set you up for the grand finale. I think that all 3 of our legs work together with one another, which is something we've tried to kind of structure. And so I am taking the under on Jalen Hurts' passing yards at 226.5. So 226 or fewer at -115. This isn't play on, the Eagles offense is kind of struggling. This is, I don't think that the Eagles offense will be required to do all too much. To your point, Brandon, if Zach Wilson does kind of put the Jets in an early hole, we obviously know the Eagles like to run the ball, including Hurts, but that doesn't affect my passing prop. I just don't think that, it's going to be necessary. I think it's going to be a cruise control sort of game. Maybe the score is low, but again, if you get the win, that's all that really matters at this point in time. For what it's worth, Jalen has gone under this mark 3 times this season, although his most recent 2 outings have seen him go over. But again, different circumstances, better quality opponents, no disrespect to the Jets. So that's where I'm at. Steven, don't mess this up.
I think I'm actually playing it safe this week after last week's debacle. I think the Eagles, I like your passing yards one with Jalen Hurts, and that's part of what my leg is just leaning into the run. Like we've seen the Eagles this season and I think the Jets specifically, like their pass defense, their pass rush, like all of that stuff is good. Their defense is still really talented. But we've seen that when the Eagles lean on the run game, they're just going to run it down your throat, and there's not really anything you can do about it. So I've got DeAndre Swift over 64.5 rushing yards, -125. I think that this should be an easy get for him. We've seen that this Jets defense, although talented, like you can run on them. Isaiah Pacheco had a monster game against them a couple of weeks ago. Like they give up yards on the ground. And so I think this is another game where if things aren't working in the passing game, Eagles are just going to be like, screw it. We're just going to run the ball the entire time. So I'm banking on a big DeAndre Swift game to get me back in the win column this week.
How about just a Zach Wilson interception to kind of seal the fate of the game with Jalen Hurts well under his passing yardage prop number. And then DeAndre Swift gets the ball to hit the over and all of us win. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Brandon, our total odds here on this are plus 385. What does that mean?
So you bet $10 and you profit $38.50. That's
Nice.
it. What else do you want me to say? You're muting your mic because your dog's barking, but I can't like expound upon that. You asked me a question. That's the answer. Also, real quick on DeAndre Swift, he's averaging 86.8 yards per game, so that's well below his average just to be able to hit the 64.5. So yeah, RJ's still
dog's still barking.
Bear.
I was explaining to y'all Steven, before we started recording that my family and I, thank you, Bear, we're leaving to Austin for the weekend because Cowboys play on Monday Night Football. So it's been a really hectic morning around here. Both dogs have been sensing it, I think. That is our same game parlay brought to you by our friends at DraftKings, our Pick 3 segment. We are now going to offer all of our picks and discussion and analysis for the Sunday games of week 6. We'll offer one sentence, of course, on Monday Night Football. I should have said, by the way, at the beginning of the episode that earlier in the week, I spoke to New Orleans Saints rookie defensive tackle Brian Brzee. So we're tacking that discussion, on the end of the episode. Brian's a good dude and was representing a good cause. So hopefully everybody enjoys that conversation. We'll obviously talk about the Saints when we get there. Stephen, I'll be honest with you. I kind of forgot there was another London game this week. 3 in a row. It's kind of getting a little bit overwhelming. The Tennessee Titans are technically hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Do you have any thoughts? The Titans are 4-point underdogs across the pond.
I'm kind of tired of the London games.
That's where I was at. Good for you. You said it though, not me. So they're coming.
So I generally on Sundays, I try to sleep in a little bit, get up, do whatever I need to do and get ready for football. But it's like, I instinctively, knowing that there's a football game at 8:30 in the morning, I just get up early and am like ready for football. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's not like I'm setting an alarm. I just get up and I'm annoyed about it. And then a couple of weeks ago, if you didn't have ESPN Plus, you couldn't even watch it. So I got up early and couldn't even watch that game because I don't have ESPN Plus. But I have zero faith in the Tennessee Titans right now. Like I know they're still frisky because of Mike Vrabel, but they're just not a very good football team. Derrick Henry isn't having a great year. I know Tajay Spears, it looks like a nice rookie, but overall they're just not a particularly good football team. And the Ravens have been good, but they haven't been like overly impressive. But I think if you watch the Ravens, you're seeing Lamar's kind of stepping into this next evolution where he can run when he has to. He can make plays with his legs when he has to, but he's been really good as a passer this season, despite the fact the Ravens have had a ton of injuries. So I like Baltimore here. I think they're talented enough, even coming off of a poor performance against the Steelers, those weird AFC North matchups. I think they'll get a W this week, and I think they'll cover against the Titans.
Brandon, I do want to set you up for a potential icebox. I agree completely with Stephen. The Titans have potential. They're cute, but I trust the Ravens a lot more, even though they're coming off of a tough loss against the Steelers. Lamar wasn't the problem in that game. I mean, his pass catchers really, really let him down. But I'm taking the Ravens again. I wanted to give you the floor.
I mean, more than one thing can be true. He definitely had an incredible amount of bad luck, and that was tough to see. At the same time, he had one drive at the end of the game where he had a chance to go and win, and another one where he had a chance to go and tie.
Oh, so everyone put him in a position where he had to be completely and totally flawless and perfect, and he didn't do that. So what a loser.
Okay, well, let's widen the sample size here. So Lamar Jackson has an NFL worst 11 turnovers in the fourth quarter or overtime of one-score games since the start of 2021. So it's not just like,
so that excludes his MVP season. We have to specifically draw the line.
Okay, so going back to the past, 2+ years. Yeah, that's a decent amount of sample size.
Why are we including 2021 and not slicing that off too?
My point is not that he's all to blame. My point is that he is also not zero to blame. That is more than zero to blame. He is not a victim. He's not helpless. He can be better. When you're talking about player who and his name has come up in the conversation, MVP. Well, maybe an MVP type player delivers on those final drives and is special and is not just oh no, couldn't get enough help. Anyway, I do think the Ravens will bounce back. The Titans, I would not bet this line because the Titans are weird and I just don't know what to fully make of them. So I wouldn't bet the line. I don't feel comfortable touching it, but I will take the Ravens to win.
Yeah, I don't. The Titans every year, it's like you never know what you're gonna expect, and they can't throw the ball at all. Like they have no pass catchers that are really producing. So I don't. Every single season, it's like this with Tennessee Titan and Mike Vrabel.
So I know neither of you would, obviously, given the success that the Chiefs and Eagles have had in recent history. But even as unsuccessful as the Cowboys have been, I wouldn't trade lives with the Titans. I recognize that they've had all these moments, whatever. But it's such a, I have to imagine frustrating experience to root for this team. It's like pulling teeth. But whatever. The San Francisco 49ers, Brandon, are visiting the Cleveland Browns. The Niners look like the best team in the NFL right now. They are getting 10 points on the road. It remains to be seen whether or not Deshaun Watson will play in this game. It looks doubtful. The line certainly, the line would be huge no matter what, but it looks like San Francisco is going to be in an advantageous spot to get to 6-0.
Yeah, I am going to take the 49ers. I know they're coming off that big win, emotional maybe, off the Cowboys blowing them out. And I know the Browns defense is really good, but so I actually will be interested to see this matchup from that perspective. If there is a defense that's had a chance of slowing the 49ers offense down so far this year, it would be them. Now, the problem is the Browns offense is not in a good spot. So, that's obviously going to be helping the 49ers. I'll take the 49ers to win and cover, but I am intrigued by the matchup in theory.
Yeah, I think this is an easy 49ers win. The Browns defense has legitimately been special this season, but their offense is awful. And there's something weird going on with Deshaun Watson. He's got the shoulder thing right now, didn't play last week, and their responses on him have been really weird, where they're like, well, he practiced and we kind of expected him to play, but now he's not available and he's not playing. And it's just all bad on the offensive side of the ball for Cleveland. And so at the end of the day, San Francisco is just much more talented across the board. And we know Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, CMC, they're all just inevitable. And so even though the Browns defense is awesome, the 49ers will eventually rip off big plays and score, and Cleveland's just not going to be able to keep up, whether Deshaun Watson's in the game or not.
Yeah, I certainly think that Cleveland can hang with them a bit when they're on defense, but at a certain point, it's just going to be overwhelming, especially if nothing is happening on offense for Cleveland. It's just the dam will break. I think it's stupid that the Browns haven't said this is the biggest game in the regular season history for them. That's clearly an effective strategy against the Niners. So silly of them to not employ that themselves. Clean sweep for us, taking San Francisco. The Miami Dolphins, Stephen, are laying 13.5 points at home against the Carolina Panthers. Frank Reich kind of with a bad scene this week, coming out and sort of pointing fingers at David Tepper for meddling. That's my word, not his. The Panthers are, I don't know that the Panthers are interesting enough for us to care when they're down bad, Stephen, but they're kind of down bad.
So I wanted to believe that Frank Reich was a good head coach who got dealt a bad hand in Indianapolis. And
people forget how that started, by the way, to your point. That was the Josh McDaniels, about face. So to your point.
Yeah. And I wanted to believe that he just got dealt a bad situation there and that he could turn things around in Carolina. And he gets this young quarterback who he's got another chance to develop this guy. And I understand that the Panthers had a bad roster to begin with. They were never going to be lights out this season and be a super competitive football team. But he knew what he was getting into. I don't work for the Panthers, and I know that David Tepper likes to be involved and likes to meddle. We know that about him as an owner. So for him to come out and say that and kind of hint around the fact he didn't want Bryce Young, he wanted CJ Stroud or something, I think that's bogus, and that's a big loser energy approach from Frank Reich. So, and obviously I've been picking against the Panthers like crazy this season because they're that bad. Like they're just not a good football team. The Dolphins are the most explosive offense in all of the NFL, and even though Devon Achane had to go to IR this week, huge bummer for my fantasy team. They still have Tyreek Hill, they still have Jalen Waddle, they still have Raheem Mostert. Like they're going to absolutely dominate the Panthers. So I'll take the Dolphins with the points, and I think it's just going to be another blowout for Miami.
Is the Texan situation like that much worse, or that much better, I should say, than what the Panthers have going on? Do you guys feel that way?
When you say situation, like
it's like
the
supporting
roster...
cast regarding around a quarterback?
I would say, I mean, I obviously like it, but I would say it was worse. I mean, it was objectively worse, right? Like, I mean, the Texans finished, worse off and had a higher draft pick than the Panthers. I mean, granted, the Panthers dealt away DJ Moore, but still.
So I'm not saying just because Bryce Young isn't a MVP, isn't like MVP, like all-star from the jump means he's definitely bad. But I mean, I don't think CJ Stroud's success is an irrelevant measuring point when you're comparing those two. So, and also I think the fact that he's so tiny is also not irrelevant. I haven't seen enough Bryce Young to really be in on him or not, or to have a great feel for him yet. But my antenna have been raised, and I'm worried about how there hasn't been more progress so far. And I'm willing to bet against him and willing to bet against the Panthers. And the Dolphins are a pretty much unstoppable scoring machine. I know they lost Achane, right? Devon, is it? What is the pronunciation for this? I've seen.
I think it's Devon Achane, and everybody was saying Achane, and then he said it's Achane. Actually,
we're just like ignoring the E at the end, silent E. Yeah, I mean, even without that, Raheem Mostert. I mean, the system is going to have them. They're breaking the NFL. It's broke the record for yards generated in 5 games to start the season. So yeah, the Dolphins are capable of moving the ball and scoring points, and that's exactly what they'll do here.
Just a few quick things for me. One, I agree with everything y'all said on the Panthers. They are on bye after this game, and then they get the Texans. And if they get run over by the Texans after a bye week to prepare, then is the time where I think it's allowable to have a hard take. Like we're all kind of like firm, but still somewhat like malleable takes, but you can have a hard one if they lose to the Texans coming off their bye. I agree with you both. Again, I'm taking the Dolphins. 13.5 isn't even scary for this team. You know what I mean? Like, I recognize it's the Panthers, but like, they're just that good. If the Dolphins reverted to their old logo, they would be my second favorite team in the NFL. Like, I would enjoy everything about them. I just, that is what's holding me back from really investing emotionally. Finally, I heard Greg Rosenthal talk about this on the Around the NFL podcast. The thing you mentioned, Brandon, the first 5 weeks thing. He said that that's not a record, that's a statistic. And there was some pushback on that. So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts. Do you think that's a record or a statistic?
You mean no one else has done it before, right?
Right. So they have the most total yards through the first 5 weeks of a season. They surpassed The Greatest Show on Turf last week. So Greg
he's saying it's not a record because 5 games shouldn't be a measurement.
Yeah, he was like, it's a statistic. He was like, we don't need to call it a record. Like nobody is ever like wondering who did this. You know what I mean? It's a cool statistic, but it's not a record. I kind of agree with it. It was an interesting delineation between those two words.
I think I agree with that.
No, I disagree. Well, it's a franchise record, right? At least. Is it not a franchise record? It's a franchise statistic is what you're going to say?
I mean, but like it would likely be a franchise record this week too. Even, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I mean,
it's just nobody's ever going to be in 10 years. Nobody's ever going to be like, remember that 2023 season where the Dolphins had more yards through 5 games than any team in NFL history?
They do this on New Heights with Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce, where they talk about like LeBron stats, where it's like kind of like arbitrary, and it's really impressive stuff, but it's like an arbitrary kind of timeline or like number. Like they use the example of like Jalen Hurts is the first player with 30 plus touchdowns in his first 50 games. So I don't know.
See, but that's also I don't know if that's a record, but like that's closer to a record in my mind than this. But yeah, like it feels like actually, funny enough, shout out to Stats. He would say about Patrick Mahomes, he would say like we don't have to invent new things like to exemplify his greatness. Like that, this feels like if we're calling it a record, it feels like we're really reaching. We can just say they're good.
He meant that in terms of like statistical context.
How dare you try to speak for Stats?
I mean, he meant it in terms of like people literally trying to like twist themselves into a pretzel to like make things even more impressive than they were or whatever.
Well, he beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, so it was super impressive. Steven, let's move on. The Seahawks, fellow Green Birds, will visit the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. The Bengals getting a true home field advantage of 3 points. This is a tight game, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like I owe Joe Burrow an apology because last week I was just kind of like, now all of a sudden the calf is healthy and he's good to go. And then he balled out last week and looked good. And then this week he's like, I'm the closest to 100% I've been all year. And now it's hard not to just be like back in on the Bengals now because you just assume that as long as Burrow's good, as long as Jamar Chase is good, they're going to find ways to make explosive plays and they're going to be a functional offense again. And the defense will be, good enough to make an impact. And I do think this is a tight game and I'm interested to see how the Seahawks play. I just feel like I've been kind of underwhelmed overall by the Seahawks this season at times. So I think I'm going to take the Bengals here at home. I think I'm going to take them with the points and I'm buying into the fact that Joe Burrow looks healthy and can actually throw down the football field again. So I do think it's going to be a close game, but I think Cincinnati pulls it off.
Why don't you go, RJ?
Well, Steven shared, by the way, in our chat that this just happened in real time for us. Deshaun Watson was ruled out of the Niners game. So, I mean, everything we said stands. But I'm not saying the Bengals need to prove it, but I'm still a little teeny bit tentative. The first few weeks were really scary. So they've certainly earned the benefit of the doubt in an overall sense, but I would like to see it again. I'll take the Seahawks here. I'm willing to kind of believe a little bit coming off the bye. Like it just kind of feels like a right opportunity for the Seahawks. We see them show up for stuff like this. I'll take Seattle.
I like Seattle here too. I mean, I'll take the points in this situation. I like the Bengals a lot. It's not even nothing against them. I just think that Seattle's in a spot here where they're coming off of playing. When did they play last?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so they're coming off their bye.
Monday Night Football when they beat the Giants.
Yep, they're coming off their bye. They're rested. I think they have the cornerbacks to match the Bengals' receiving talent. And Devin Witherspoon was obviously awesome in his last game, playmaker. I do think the Seahawks, they were the only team right to beat the Lions this year, and that was in Detroit. So I've seen them win on the road. I know the Giants aren't really impressive, but they won there. I believe in them. I think they can, at the very least, make this a very close game and cover. And I'll take them to win outright.
Steven, that means something very important about you.
Fun fact about the icebox.
Winter is coming.
I'm in the icebox. Funny enough, the first icebox of the week is you with Joe Burrow. Come on, that was hilarious. I know y'all think that was a great job by me. Let's move on. The Indianapolis Colts, the Anthony Richardson Indianapolis Colts, Brandon, are visiting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville laying 4 points at home. An opportunity for revenge for Gardner Minshew.
Yes.
I don't know. I'll take the Jaguars. I'll just be straight up about this. I actually was really impressed with Shane Steichen last week, but I think the Jaguars are kind of starting to round into form a little bit here, and I don't want to bet against them, especially on the Colts of all teams.
I forget what the streak is. If it's still, I think the last time the Colts won in Jacksonville was 2014. Like, it's been a long time. They typically just do not play well down there in Duval County. Jags, really impressive win over the Bills last week in London. They're back in the United States of America, and I think that Doug Peterson will lead his team to a win over a Colts team that's been plucky this year. And I think they've certainly, they're outperforming expectations. I think Gardner, I don't think the Colts are going to be a joke in this game. I think they've been pretty competitive all year, but I do think the Jags are kind of figuring things out a little bit. as tends to happen in a Doug Peterson season. Slower starts start to kind of figure it out a little bit more as the season goes along, and I will take the Jags to win and cover.
I think I'm in the same boat. I'm not totally bought into the Jags just yet. I don't know what matchup wise they have against the Buffalo Bills. Cause like even a couple of years ago when they were the worst team in football and they have that 9-6 win against Buffalo or whatever, like there's just something that they have matchup wise on the Buffalo Bills that works.
They have the better Josh Allen.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And I think Josh Allen had a monster game in that one too, but I still think Jacksonville is still trying to figure some things out. Like I'm not totally sold. Like I would not be shocked if this game winds up being way closer than it should be, because I think Jacksonville is clearly the more talented team, especially with Gardner Minshew in there. But Gardner can be a functional quarterback in the NFL. So I think that this might wind up being a close game, but Jacksonville inevitably pulls away and easily covers the 4 points. I'll take the Jags too.
Clean sweep. All right. The Minnesota Vikings are reeling and coming off of another loss, dealing with all the Kirk Cousins trade talk discussion. They are visiting the Windy City. Stephen, the Bears laying 3 points at home, coming off the mini bye, their first win of the season. Kind of an emotional thing. Obviously, the big Justin Fields, DJ Moore performance. Imagine not starting DJ Moore in fantasy last week. Did you win, by the way, Stephen?
No. I lost by 4 points.
Oh God. Well, you get to go first here. So
had to play Romeo Dobbs, and Jordan Love was just absolutely awful last week. I think I'm going to take the Bears here. And I want to make it clear, if Justin Jefferson was available in this game for the Minnesota Vikings, I would take the Vikings here. And I would think that Justin Jefferson would have an absolute monster game, but going Justin Jefferson to KJ Osborne is quite the downgrade. And I know Jordan Addison has looked really talented and he's an interesting player, but he's also been a little bit banged up in practice this week. And I just think that the Bears, coming off that extended break from Thursday Night Football, they're playing well right now. And I'm certainly not bought into Chicago and what Justin Fields has put together in the last 2 games. But I think right now they're kind of humming offensively and they've got a little bit more talent and it's at home and in a close game. And I just don't know what to expect from Kirk Cousins with no Justin Jefferson in this offense moving forward. So until I see it, I don't really feel comfortable picking the Vikings. So I'm going to go with the Bears here.
I'm going to take the Bears to win.
I'm happy that that's all I got to hear with regards to this game. So I thought about not doing this because Brandon was nodding with a lot of what you were saying. So it's kind of going to let him throw some flowers at Justin Fields, which he effectively did. It's nice to know that Brandon agrees that Justin Fields is a functional and capable and very good NFL quarterback. I don't want to go on the icebox for the Vikings, although it would be kind of appropriate because, it's like a cold, locale. But I can't. I'm sorry. I really can't. And I would like to see the Bears, take another step forward. So I'll take the Bears, especially if I'm getting points at home. I think that's the logic that we're all sharing. Let's move on. Brandon, you can speak again. The Washington Commanders are visiting the Atlanta Falcons, the Taylor Heineke revenge game. Atlanta laying 2.5 points at home. So not even getting the full 3 points. The Commanders coming off of that embarrassing Thursday Night Football loss. This is a gross game.
Yeah, another game I would not touch this line. I don't trust the Falcons at all, but at the same time, I think it's possible that the Commanders are in a spot where they have a head coach who's kind of, dead man walking here. And I don't know how much the players in turn are, super motivated. I don't know that it's like, hey, we're coming off this tough loss, but we're going to rebound. Like, I don't know if they care as much as they would, in a different situation. Not saying they don't care at all. They're obviously professionals. They want to, go out and perform, but I just don't know if this Commanders team has any juice right now. And really, it's not really about who I believe in more. It's who I believe in less here. And I think I just believe in the Commanders less. So I'll take the Falcons when it's 50-50 coin flip for me. I'll decide with the home team.
I think I have to go with Atlanta here too. And it's not because I believe in Desmond Ritter or Arthur Smith, really, but I believe in Bijan Robinson. And I think this is a good matchup for him. We saw the Commanders secondary get absolutely roasted last week. And while the Falcons don't throw the ball and like I don't trust how they're going to utilize Drake London and Kyle Pitts on a weekly basis, I just feel like they've shown a little bit more consistency this season, at least. And the Falcons defense has actually been okay this year. Their secondary's got some pretty talented players. So I just don't have faith in Sam Howell and the Commanders. Sam Howell is putting up stats and padding his numbers a little bit, but he eats so many sacks every single week. I just have no faith in Washington at all right now. So I'll take Atlanta as well.
One of my favorite bits, and Brandon knows this from the mixtape, is the Taylor Heineke Jordans thing. So I'm really sad that he doesn't have a chance to get this one, like these colors. Because
you don't know that. What if
I don't know his rules? Like if he
hurt.
If he comes in like at halftime, does it count the same for him? You know what I mean?
I think so. We can get one at that point. You can get one of the two shoes.
Yeah, I do not feel comfortable leaning with Washington after what we saw last week. It would be hilarious if this was like a Kyle Pitts game, right? Like he had like 8 catches for like 203 yards and like 3 touchdowns or something like that. I'm not saying I believe in that either, but I definitely believe in the Commanders a lot less. So I'll take Atlanta. The New Orleans Saints are in Houston. Really, really bad beat for me last week against Atlanta. Houston was getting 1.5, and I took that, and that's what they're getting this week, actually, although it's at home against the Saints. I'll take them. I don't believe in the Saints at all. And I think there are some things there that I don't totally hate. But I could totally see the CJ Stroud thing continuing to roll and move. I mean, I believe in their offense a lot more than I believe in what Derek Carr has to offer. And so ultimately, again, getting points at home, this feels kind of Bears Vikings-ish to me. I'm taking the Texans, Stephen.
I don't know how I feel about this game. I think the Saints are probably the more talented team right now, at least on the defensive side of the ball. And they're coming off that win against the Patriots, but Derek Carr still hasn't looked good. Like CJ Stroud, I know they lost last week, but he did have some nice moments and kept them close in that game. And
he had the drive where he gave them the lead. That was a really impressive drive.
And I think the Texans defense has actually been legitimately impressive at times this season. Like D'Amico Ryans is doing a really good job. So like I'm bought into Houston moving forward and the future there. And I want to see them kind of succeed because I really like CJ Stroud as a player. I just think ultimately the Saints are just a much more experienced team that seems to find a way to kind of win games like this and not lose to a team that's still trying to build things up like the Houston Texans. So I guess I'll lean with the Saints and take the points here just because it feels like a tight game, but it feels like a kind of game that the Saints inevitably win.
Brandon, put one of us in.
I'm going to predict a tie. No, I'm kidding. Just to not give anyone the satisfaction. I'm looking at the Saints schedule here, and
it's all easy. Like that was why Stephen and I did an episode in the offseason that you missed, and I think we were like, yeah, we could totally see like 13 wins for them.
Well, it's also like 1-point win over the Titans at home, 3-point win.
You're talking
over
their
the
past
Panthers.
schedule, right?
Yeah, 1-point win over lost to the Packers, and they got beat soundly by the Bucks, and then
that Packers loss was what, like a 17-point lead?
Yeah, they were up
blew?
and they blew it. Yeah, I just I don't know, man. It's tough because I kind of want to just bet on the quarterback, and obviously, I think you would have to ride with CJ Stroud, especially if you're getting 1.5 points. You kind of like that, at home. So I guess I will ultimately do that, but I don't feel great about it.
Steven?
Sorry, Steven.
Fun fact about the icebox.
Winter is coming.
Burr! I'm in the icebox. Never gets old. The New England Patriots look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, and they will be in Las Vegas this week. A true home field advantage the Raiders are getting. Thank you, Bear. 3 points. I'll make this simple. I'll make it cut and dry. The Patriots have scored 3 points in their last 2 games. I do not think they will score many more. I'm locking up the Raiders, as bold as that feels. I don't trust them at all, but I just think the Patriots are that bad.
There's some really bad games on the schedule this week. Really, like not juice-filled games. And here's another one. This isn't going to be like last year, where I'm sure the Patriots just gave the Raiders a touchdown at the end of the game, but the Raiders will not need that to win this time. I agree with you. I mean, there's just how could you possibly take the Patriots right now? How could you? Like, there's no. They look awful. They're terrible. Another team that kind of looks checked out. I will take the Raiders, who are also bad, but are less bad.
Who's better coached in between these two teams?
I still think it's the Patriots, but they've got a lot of injuries right now.
You also really hate Josh McDaniels, more than either of us. Okay, Steven, are you jumping in? Are you siding with us?
I'm gonna take the Raiders here, and I think normally if it wasn't for the injuries that the Patriots have on the defensive side of the ball, I would totally pick the Patriots here and be like, this is a total Bill Belichick game where their defense is gonna play really well and maybe get a pick six or something off of Jimmy G, who's thrown a ton of interceptions this season. And so it would be like that kind of game for the Patriots where their offense still looks terrible, but the defense plays so well that they wind up winning the game for them. Like we've seen Bill Belichick do that so many times over the years, but they have so many injuries on that side of the ball. Like it just feels like the Patriots are kind of unraveling here and they can't do anything offensively. And Max Crosby should be all in the backfield like all day long. So I think I have to go with the Raiders here, even though I hate picking them in any scenario.
Yeah, I do think that this is the new 2 weeks ago was a pretty low point, worst loss in Bill Belichick's career. Last week, new low point, worst loss at home in Bill Belichick's career. Losing to Josh McDaniels when their team looks bad would be a different kind of low point. Thank you, Bear. He's passionate about my lock. Brandon, the Eagles are facing the Jets, as we mentioned. That was our pick 3 game. The Jets are getting 7 points at home. I saw about a minute ago as we are recording that Sauce Gardner not at practice right now.
Wow.
Well, apparently he's not feeling well, so it might just be like a temporary thing, obviously.
Sure.
But Eagles are finding ways to win. The Jets coming off of a win. Jets have been cute, but we use the word plucky a lot. Maybe not plucky. They've been cute, but it's hard to really believe in, especially against a team like this.
They haven't been a joke. They haven't been like a cakewalk for anyone, right? Except for pretty much the Cowboys. Although that game again was tied at half, or it was one score game at halftime, so it was at least competitive for a bit before things kind of went awry there. Yeah, I don't love that Jalen Carter might miss this game. Apparently, that popped up in the randomly just on the injury report this week. So we'll have to see what his final status is. Darius Slay also looks like he's trending to be out towards this game. All that said, I still think the Eagles have enough here to, again, get to Zach Wilson, pressure him, force him into some mistakes. I think the Eagles offense, which has been making progress and I feel better about, could have some issues from a standpoint of the Jets have a really strong defensive front, and I don't think it'll just be like a cakewalk for the offense marching down the field all game long. But like you guys said, even when the Eagles go up against like a top-ranked run defense, it just doesn't matter. Like they still have their way with those kind of defenses. They're just that good at running the ball. So I think ultimately they'll be able to score enough. And I think that why would you say this is the time that the Eagles are finally going to lose to the Jets for the first time ever? I don't see it. I think the Eagles are trending in the right direction, even with the injury issues happening here. I think they win this game, and I think there's enough turnover favor going in their way from Zach Wilson to be able to cover the spread as well. And I should mention, I mentioned these stats last week, but they improved. Eagles now 13-1 as road favorites under Nick Sirianni straight up, and they advanced to 7-7 against the spread in those scenarios.
Yeah, I think this is a win for the Eagles, and the Jets have been more interesting than I think we thought they would be with Zach Wilson, but ultimately exactly what BLG said, and that's why it's part of my pick 3 leg. Like, I just think the Eagles in tough matchups like this just say, all right, well, we're just going to run the ball until you can stop it. And so I expect a lot of that. And I expect the Eagles to just be able to put up enough points to get a win, even in a tough matchup against a tough Jets defense. So I'll take the Eagles.
This kicks off a 4-week stretch where the Jets are at home. They're on their bye next week. And the game's obviously at home for them. They're on their bye, and then they visit the Giants. Obviously, that's at MetLife. And then they host the Chargers. I think they're taking 2 of these 3 games. But I'm inclined to think that they're the 2 after the bye if they do make some sort of change or adjustment. Again, I would like to believe in. I find them to be. I would just love to see this like click a little bit, like give them a little bit of grace, but it's just so hard to imagine it's coming this week. The 7 points make me want to at least take that, but I just have no reason to not pick against or to pick against Philly in that capacity. So I'll take the Eagles and lead the points. The Cardinals are visiting the Rams, Brandon, and the Rams are 7-point favorites. Everybody loves the Cardinals-Rams matchups of the NFC West. These are actually the ones that like nobody cares about. People are interested in Rams-Seahawks, Rams-Niners, Seahawks-Niners, but Rams-Cardinals doesn't have a lot of juice.
Matthew Stafford is going to carve up that secondary with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp at his disposal. I feel pretty good about this one. Cardinals had that cute start, but since then have been a little bit more of the Cardinals that everyone expected them to see, especially on defense there. So I will take the Rams to win and cover.
Yeah, I think this is an easy Rams win. The Cardinals secondary has been one of the worst in the NFL so far this season, and Stafford's playing really, really well. And so now that Kupp's back, Puka is still heavily involved in the offense, looking like a playmaker. I think that the Rams are just going to pass all over the Cardinals. So I think this is an easy win for the Rams.
I'm with you both. I think the Rams are I think we had reason to doubt, but I think like come December, we might be like, that was the team that was hiding a bit in plain sight that we jumped to some harsh conclusions about. They did win the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Again, it was nobody really cared, but it did happen at least. So, whatever.
Guess.
Yeah, I'll take the Rams. This game was flexed into the afternoon slot. Brandon, the Detroit Lions now getting the big boy treatment. They are visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're an afternoon team, baby. That's when you become really, really, really interesting. 3-point favorites on the road. The Lions are as they head down to my house. Raymond James Stadium's Twitter handle is at RJ Stadium.
Boo. This is my lock of the week. I'm taking the Lions, locking them up. When the Eagles played the Buccaneers, Eagles just had their way with that Bucs defense, their offensive line. Lions obviously also have a strong front. I think the Lions are going to be able to run the ball. Also, Lions have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, and I think they're going to be able to shut down what's not even a very good at all Bucs rushing attack and make the Bucs very one-dimensional in terms of having to pass the ball. And that will allow Aiden Hutchinson and the Lions pass rush to get after Baker, pressure him into some mistakes. The line's a little fishy here because I feel like it should be more. I know it's an away game, but like Lions have been really good. They're looking good. Ben Johnson very much. RJ talked about it. We talked about it in the mixtape, just like a lock, to be a head coach. Very exciting stuff going on there. I think he can flummox Todd Bowles, who is a good defensive mind, but not good enough to stop the Lions offense right now. I feel very confident about the Lions winning this game and covering only a 3-point spread.
I'm going to take the Lions, and I feel like some of the reason this is so close too is just because the Lions are a little bit banged up right now. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, who missed last week, returned to practice this week, seems like he's going to be good to go. But Jahmyr Gibbs might not be available. It doesn't matter because they're just going to give 25 carries to David Montgomery. And I think even though they're a little bit banged up, I think the Lions are just the better team. Sam Laporta also missed practice yesterday, so that's something to monitor on Friday's practice, see if he's able to give it a go. But I just think the Lions are ultimately the much more talented team, even though Baker's actually been okay this season for the Bucs. I just think the Lions will get it done, so I'll go with Detroit.
I had forgotten that you locked this game up, Brandon. So when I was typing the lines out, I was like, oh, this is an easy lock of the week. And then I went and was checking the message. I was like, oh, well, BLG locked it up. Super easy. I'm taking the Lions. I feel like already atoned. I'm sorry that I didn't believe in the Lions. Although, to be fair, I hated that everyone believed in it. That was really what was driving me against it. So I was trying to zag when everyone was zigging. They're a lot of fun. And people, I think, overuse the term team of destiny. I don't feel that way about the Lions, but they're like a team of joy. Like there's so much fun to be had here. And it just kind of feels like they'll have fun and find a way. Like, could this not be like a Jamison Williams, like 86-yard touchdown kind of week, like with the other questions, at other places. So I'll take the Lions and I feel really good about it. And I'm happy that they're getting flexed for the afternoon because it makes the day a little bit nicer. Sunday Night Football, Stephen, Daniel Jones is out. All right, the fact that we have to watch the Giants again in primetime is awful enough. All due respect to Tyrod Taylor, this game has now gotten worse. So when I wrote this down, the odds were Buffalo as 14.5-point favorites at home. It's hard to come off of a loss and then be 14.5-point favorites. Although the Broncos came off allowing 70 points and we're setting the stage. I'll take the Bills though, Steven.
Yeah, this is actually my lock of the week. And that was before I knew Daniel Jones wasn't going to play in this game. But that's just how bad the Giants have been offensively. And, the Bills have a lot of injuries on defense right now. So that's something to monitor moving forward. But that doesn't matter in this game at all. The Josh Allen's just going to absolutely decimate the Giants defense. And they're going to demolish that Giants offensive line. So I think this is an easy monster win for the Bills.
RJ can't talk, of course, but I feel like he would probably agree with me in that if you're a fan of the Cowboys in his case, or the Eagles in my case, that you're rooting for the Giants to win this game, because it'd be very funny if Tyrod Taylor led them to victory, and then there's a quarterback controversy brewing. And also from a standpoint of the worst thing that can happen if you are a team or someone that is rooting against the Giants and their long-term success is that if they actually end up with the number 1 overall pick somehow and get Caleb Williams and are able to pivot out of Daniel Jones, that's the worst case scenario. So I would love for the Giants to pick up a meaningless win here, where plenty more losses will be on the way for them, and to do it in a fashion where Tyrod comes in and is, again, kind of creates some discussion, some controversy. I would love to see that, but I do not think that is the most likely scenario. I could see maybe he's a little frisky. Maybe the Giants, maybe because of his mobility. I know Daniel Jones can run around too, but maybe he. I'm really talking myself into this, even though it's not likely. I'm not going to do it, and also I'm not.
Use that me for talking too long, by the way, just so we're clear.
You can't talk. You're zapped. Anyway, I could see it's conceivable to me that the Giants could cover the spread, but I'm too much of a coward to do it. It's a big number, and I will take the Bills to cover and win.
Don't you hate when people say it's a big number?
That was the bit. Yes.
It didn't sound like a bit. It sounded serious and authentic. So you did a horrible job.
That's just how I talk.
We have one final game left, but it is Monday Night Football. The rules are only one sentence. The Dallas Cowboys laying 2 points.
I think we can get into this one. We did more than a sentence when we did the Eagles game on Monday Night Football. I think the one line thing is more of about a matchup we don't really care about.
So it's convenient, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, people want to hear your Cowboys take.
That's really a nice thing to say to me. So, okay, the Dallas Cowboys are laying 2 points on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. I imagine there will be a lot of Cowboys fans there, partly because they travel, but partly because nobody cares about the Chargers. To your point earlier, Brandon, it is the Kellen Moore rematch, and Dallas obviously coming off the shellacking that they took last week on Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys have their bye after this, as mentioned. The Chargers are coming off their bye. I'll give you the floor first, BLG.
I really would love for the Chargers to win this game. I think it would be, can you imagine the scenario where the Cowboys get blown out by the 49ers?
I have spent all week long
and then
the scenario
lose. This is a really.
Can you imagine this super predictable thing?
This is a terrible look for Mike McCarthy. If you go out and you what happened against the Niners, which happened, and then lose to the guy you fired, and also the Chargers have a big offensive performance against your defense. So really tenuous times for Mike McCarthy.
Why would that not be a bad look for Dan Quinn? I'm not at all trying to say.
Well,
Mike
it would
McCarthy,
be for him too, but I'm saying
nobody comes for Dan Quinn. No, that's a point.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be a bad look for him, but did Dan Quinn decide to fire Kellen Moore?
No, but
well, that's a big factor because the offense looks worse now.
People say that Dan Quinn's defense is the best, and Dan Quinn's untouchable, and Dan Quinn walks on water. So it's okay, well, if why can't you shut down? Again, I'm not saying don't come for Mike McCarthy. I'm saying come for Dan Quinn in the respect that makes sense. That's all.
Well, he would also deserve blame, yes. But if I would more point it at if Kellen Moore is doing well, I'd also point it at the guy who got rid of him. And even though that the Cowboys ranked highly in EPA and all these offensive metrics, and really when you got rid of him, there's probably likely only room to go down from that standpoint, which certainly the Cowboys have been doing. So could be a mistake, but I cannot possibly give the Chargers the benefit of the doubt. They have just not earned that at all. Cowboys actually have done that more this year, even though they're coming off a bad loss. They've been able to obviously beat some teams and beat them badly. So 2-point spread is, if you think the Cowboys are going to win, they're obviously going to cover, because that's not, first of all, it's only 2 points, and in their wins, they beat the crap out of teams. So it's a matter of if you think they're going to win or not. And the Chargers have lost all right to benefit of the doubt. So I will take the Cowboys to win.
I think there's two things that are guaranteed in this game: questionable coaching decisions on both sides, and the Chargers ultimately making it close in the fourth quarter for whatever reason, whichever way they want. It's going to be weird and it'll end weird. I think I'm going to go with the Chargers in this game, though. And it's specifically because of Kellen Moore. I think he spent the bye, like the entirety of the bye, probably just installing things specifically to try to beat the Cowboys. And Justin Herbert's playing really well right now, even though they're shorthanded without Mike Williams. I think the Chargers are going to be ready to go. So I'm going to roll with them this week.
I don't know if I said this on the mixtape, Brandon, but so Leighton Vander Esch has been placed on injured reserve this week. The Cowboys signed Rashaan Evans, who actually went 3 picks after Leighton in the 2018 draft to the Titans.
And a former Eagle.
Right. Interestingly, I find this to be interesting. It was a game against the Chargers on the road 2 years ago in week 2 when DeMarcus Lawrence had been hurt and the Cowboys had to commit to Micah Parsons rushing the passer full time, that unlocked where we are now. And so it's a road game against the Chargers where Dallas might have to move Micah back to play some more off-ball linebacker. Just
mistake.
I mean, well, I don't know that it's a mistake, because teams are finding ways to neutralize Micah Parsons as a pass rusher. He had a streak of 8 games with 5 pressures broken last week. He did not gain a single pressure against Trent Williams. And like, not that that's anything to be like, devastated by, but I mean, still. And so I'm going to take the Cowboys. I maintain that they're a good team, a very good team. Even they will be a playoff team. They'll win double-digit games. The bigger goal is still, I think on thin ice based on what happened last week. But I definitely can't trust the Chargers here. For what it's worth, when I talked to Michael Peterson from SB Nation's Bolts from the Blue, he said that he does not think that Kellen Moore is going to have a high level of success against the Cowboys. So, I mean, but he's a Chargers fan and he's conditioned to kind of think that way. So, this is going to be a stressful day for me personally, because early in the day, the Astros host the Rangers in game 2 of the ALCS. And I obviously have a lot of Dallas Fort Worth followers. And so it's not cool being against them in a series of such magnitude, the way I was up against Philadelphia fans last year in the World Series. But I'm built for this. So, let's go. Anything else? Anybody have anything before we get to Brian Brzee?
TGIF.
Stephen, give us something you promised to do over the weekend, and then we'll get to Brian.
Laundry.